Freeze! Hands where I can see 'em!" The words exploded into the humid evening air, shattering the suburban calm of our gated community. My heart plummeted as I peered through my kitchen window, watching in horror as Carl, the HOA's self-proclaimed security guard, aimed a pistol at my daughter, Sarah. She stood by her black SUV in my driveway, hands raised, her face a mask of steely focus. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a nightmare unfolding in real time. Carl had no idea who he was threatening. Sarah, my pride and joy, isn't just any visitor. She's an FBI tactical commander, trained to neutralize threats most people only see in action movies. But in that moment, all I could think was, this could end in tragedy. It was a Saturday evening, the kind where kids ride bikes and neighbors chat over picket fences. Sarah had driven down from DC for a rare weekend visit, a chance to escape the high-stakes world of her job. She'd parked her SUV, tinted windows, government plates, in my driveway, same as always. I was inside, prepping dinner, humming, to the radio when I heard the screech of tires. Not a car, but a golf cart, Carl's pathetic patrol vehicle. He jumped out, his face flushed with that mix of arrogance and adrenaline I'd seen too many times at HOA meetings. "You're trespassing," he bellowed, his gun drawn and shaking in his grip. My stomach lurched. Trespassing? In my own driveway? This was beyond absurd. It was dangerous. Sarah, dressed in casual jeans and a hoodie, didn't flinch. Her training had kicked in, but I could see the tension in her posture. She's faced armed suspects, led raids, and disarmed bombs. But this was personal. Carl, with his cheap badge and inflated ego, was treating her like a criminal. I dropped the spatula I was holding, oil sizzling on the stove, and bolted to the door. "Carl, stop!" I screamed, but he didn't even glance my way. His eyes were locked on Sarah, his finger twitching near the trigger. Neighbors started gathering, some frozen in shock, others pulling out phones to record. The air was thick with tension, like a storm about to break. I'd always known Carl was trouble. He'd been the HOA's security for a year, strutting around like he owned the place. He'd hassle people over minor infractions, unapproved mailbox colors, kids' toys left out. But this was a new low. Sarah's SUV must have set him off. Maybe it was the tinted windows or the unfamiliar plates. Maybe he just needed an excuse to play tough guy. Whatever it was, he'd picked the wrong target. Sarah's job requires her to carry a concealed weapon, but she hadn't reached for it. Not yet. She was trying to de-escalate, but Carl's aggression was spiraling. "Show me your ID!" he barked. My mind raced. How had a quiet family visit turned into a standoff? As a mother, I was terrified. As someone who knows what Sarah's capable of, I was almost pitying Carl. Almost. She's not just an FBI agent. She commands tactical operations, leading elite teams into situations that would make most people crumble. But Carl didn't know that. To him, she was just a suspicious woman who hadn't flashed an HOA pass. The irony was sickening. This man, with no real training, was threatening someone who could disarm him in seconds. I wanted to rush out, to put myself between them, but I knew Sarah would want me to stay back. She was in control, even if my heart was pounding out of my chest. This quiet street, with its manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses, was about to witness a clash no one would forget. Sarah's voice sliced through the chaos, steady but laced with authority. "Sir, I'm a federal officer. Lower your weapon." Her hands remained raised, her piercing blue eyes locked on Carl's, reading every twitch of his expression. She was a statue of calm, but I knew her mind was racing, calculating risks, assessing angles, and mapping out every possible outcome. This was the Sarah I'd seen glimpses of in her stories she'd share over coffee, carefully edited to spare me the worst of her world. But now, that world had followed her to my doorstep, and Carl was making it personal. Carl didn't back down. His face was a blotchy red, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool evening breeze. "I don't care who you are," he shouted, his voice cracking with a mix of bravado and panic. "You didn't show your pass. This is private property." Private property, my driveway. The absurdity hit me like a slap. I yelled again, my voice raw. "Carl, that's my daughter. She's visiting me." But he ignored me, too consumed by his own narrative. To him, Sarah was an outsider, a threat to his little kingdom. His gun wavered slightly, but his finger stayed dangerously close to the trigger. My pulse thundered in my ears. One wrong move, and this could turn deadly. The crowd of neighbors grew, their murmurs rising like a swarm of bees. Some held up phones, capturing every second of the standoff. Others whispered, "Who is she? And what's Carl doing?" Sarah's SUV, with its tinted windows and government plates, should have been a clue. Those plates screamed official, but Carl was either too stubborn or too clueless to notice. He'd always been a stickler for rules he interpreted however he pleased. I remembered the time he fined Mrs. Jenkins for planting tulips instead of roses, claiming they disrupted the aesthetic. Now he was escalating a non-issue into a life-or-death situation, all because Sarah hadn't flashed some HOA-issued pass she didn't even need. Sarah's training was her armor, but I could see the strain in her posture. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting everyone around her, including Carl, from his own stupidity. "I'm reaching for my badge," she said, her voice deliberate, each word measured to keep the situation from spiraling further. Her right hand moved slowly toward her hoodie pocket, where I knew she kept her FBI credentials. Carl's eyes widened, his grip tightening on the gun. "Don't move," he snapped, his voice shrill. The crowd gasped, and I felt my knees buckle. I gripped the doorframe, praying he wouldn't shoot. This wasn't just about Carl's ego anymore. It was about the power he thought he wielded, a power the HOA had foolishly handed him. He wasn't a trained security professional, just a guy with a gun and a vendetta against anyone who didn't bow to his rules. Sarah, on the other hand, was the real deal. She'd led teams through hostage crises, neutralized armed threats, and trained for scenarios far deadlier than this suburban showdown. But she wasn't in a war zone now. She was in my driveway, trying to visit her mom. The injustice of it burned in my chest. How dare he threaten her? How dare he put her in this position? I wanted to scream, to run out and shove Carl's golf cart into the next county, but I stayed put, trusting Sarah's instincts. She told me once during a rare moment of openness that de-escalation was about staying calm when everything screamed chaos. That's what she was doing now, but it wasn't working. Carl was too far gone, his pride blinding him to the danger he was in. If Sarah wanted to, she could have disarmed him in seconds. Her training included close-quarters combat that could neutralize a threat like Carl without breaking a sweat. But she didn't. She was giving him a chance to back down, to save face, to avoid what was coming. My heart ached with pride and terror, knowing the restraint it took to stand there, hands up, while a wannabe cop played hero. In a heartbeat, the air shifted, as if the world itself held its breath. Sarah's voice dropped to a low, commanding growl, the kind that could silence a room full of hardened criminals. "You have 3 seconds to lower that gun, or you'll regret it." Her words weren't a threat. They were a promise, delivered with the unshakable authority of someone who'd stared down far greater dangers than Carl could ever imagine. Her piercing gaze never wavered, boring into him like a laser. For the first time, Carl's bravado cracked. His eyes flickered with doubt, his shoulders sagging slightly under the weight of her presence. He was starting to realize he'd bitten off way more than he could chew. Sarah's right hand, still moving with agonizing precision, pulled her FBI badge from her pocket. The gold seal caught the last rays of the setting sun, glinting like a beacon of authority. She held it up, not as a plea, but as a declaration. "You're out of your league." The crowd gasped, a ripple of shock spreading through the neighbors. "She's FBI?" someone whispered. "Oh, Carl's done for," another muttered. The phones kept rolling, capturing every second of this suburban showdown turned masterclass in composure. Sarah's badge was unmistakable, its weight far heavier than Carl's flimsy HOA badge could ever hope to match. Carl's face drained of color, his gun trembling in his grip. He blinked rapidly, as if trying to process the reality crashing down around him. For a moment I thought he might double down, his pride pushing him to do something even stupider. But Sarah's voice cut through again, sharp and unyielding. 1. The countdown began, each number a hammer strike to Carl's crumbling ego. 2. The crowd held its breath, the tension so thick it felt like the air itself might shatter. Carl's eyes darted from Sarah's badge to her face, then to the growing crowd, realizing he was the villain in this story. 3. Sarah's final word landed like a gavel. Carl's resolve broke. He lowered his gun, the barrel dipping toward the ground as his shoulders slumped. "This isn't over," he muttered, his voice barely audible, a weak attempt to salvage his dignity. But it was over. He'd lost, and everyone knew it. Sarah didn't relax, though. Her training wouldn't allow it. She kept her eyes on Carl, her body poised, ready for any sudden moves. With her free hand, she reached for the radio clipped to her belt, her movements smooth and deliberate. "This is Commander Sarah Reynolds, FBI," she said, her voice steady, as she spoke into the device. "Requesting local law enforcement at my location. Armed civilian, threatening a federal officer." The crowd erupted in murmurs, some cheering quietly, others still filming in stunned silence. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, my hands shaking as I clung to the door frame. Pride swelled in my chest, mixed with a lingering fear that wouldn't let go. Sarah had handled it perfectly, but the danger had been so real. Carl stood there, deflated, his golf cart looking more pathetic than ever. He muttered something under his breath. Maybe an excuse, maybe a curse, but no one cared. The distant wail of police sirens grew louder, a fitting soundtrack to his downfall. Sarah's professionalism was a thing of beauty. She didn't gloat, didn't taunt. She simply took control of the scene, directing neighbors to step back and keep the area clear. Her presence was a force, transforming my quiet driveway into a command post. I caught a glimpse of the woman. She'd become not just my daughter, but a leader who thrived under pressure. Yet, beneath her calm exterior, I knew she was processing the absurdity of it all. She'd faced terrorists and cartels, but a trigger-happy HOA guard. That was a new kind of ridiculous. Carl, meanwhile, was unraveling. He paced beside his golf cart, muttering to himself, occasionally glancing at Sarah as if hoping she'd vanish. The neighbors' phones kept rolling, and I could already imagine the headlines. HOA guard pulls gun on FBI commander. The police arrived minutes later, their lights flashing red and blue across the manicured lawns. 2 officers approached, and Sarah briefed them with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times. Carl was cuffed, his protests growing, weaker as he was led to a patrol car. "I was protecting the neighborhood," he shouted. But no one was listening. He'd threatened a federal officer, and the consequences were closing in fast. By sunrise, our quiet neighborhood was a circus. The videos neighbors had recorded were everywhere. X, TikTok, local news feeds, racking up thousands of views by the hour. Headlines screamed, "HOA guards epic fail, pulls gun on FBI commander." My phone buzzed nonstop with texts from friends, neighbors, even strangers who'd seen the story online. News vans parked along our cul-de-sac, reporters knocking on my door, microphones ready. I stepped outside, still shaken, and faced a camera. "This HOA has gone too far," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Carl wasn't security. He was a bully with a gun. That's my daughter he threatened, and she's a hero who keeps us safe every day." The HOA scrambled to contain the fallout. By noon, they'd called an emergency meeting, the board's faces pale as they faced a room full of furious residents. Carl was fired on the spot, his security role dissolved. An internal review revealed he wasn't even licensed to carry a firearm in that capacity, a fact that sent shockwaves through the community. How had they let an untrained armed man patrol our streets? The board issued a written apology, posted on the community bulletin board and their website, but it was as flimsy as their oversight. "We regret the incident and are reviewing our policies," it read. Regret? That word didn't come close to capturing the fear we'd felt, the danger Sarah had faced. Residents weren't having it. The meeting turned into a shouting match, with neighbors demanding the board's resignation. Mrs. Jenkins, still bitter about her tulip fine, stood up and declared, "This isn't a neighborhood anymore. It's a dictatorship." Others shared stories of Carl's overreach, fining kids for chalk drawings, harassing delivery drivers, even threatening pets for excessive barking. The videos of Sarah's standoff became a rallying cry, proof that the HOA's power had gone unchecked for too long. A petition to disband the HOA entirely started circulating, gaining hundreds of signatures by day's end. Sarah, true to form, stayed out of the spotlight. She declined every interview request, telling reporters, "My job is to protect, not to be on camera." But I saw the toll it took. That evening, as we sat in my living room, the adrenaline finally fading, she stared at her coffee mug, her usual spark dimmed. "Mom, I've seen worse," she said, her voice quiet. But this was my safe place. My heart broke. Sarah faces danger daily. Raids, stakeouts, threats most of us can't imagine. But my driveway, my home, that was supposed to be her sanctuary, a place to escape the chaos of her job. Instead, she'd been forced to switch into commander mode, all because of Carl's reckless ego. I couldn't stay silent. I joined the neighbors' group chats, organized a community forum, and even spoke to a local news anchor on live TV. "This isn't just about my daughter," I said, my voice steadier now. "It's about all of us. We deserve to feel safe in our own homes." The story spread beyond our town, sparking debates about HOAs nationwide. Posts on X called Carl everything from mall cop gone wild to the HOA Hitler. Some defended him, claiming he was just doing his job, but the overwhelming response was outrage. People shared their own HOA horror stories, turning Sarah's ordeal into a symbol of a bigger problem. For me, the aftermath was personal. Every time I looked at Sarah, I saw both the fearless commander and the little girl who used to braid my hair. I was so proud of her restraint, her strength, but I was haunted by what could have happened. If Carl had pulled that trigger, if Sarah hadn't stayed calm, I could have lost her. The thought kept me up at night, long after the news vans left. I hugged her tighter before she headed back to DC, whispering, "You're my hero." She smiled, but her eyes held a shadow, a reminder that even heroes carry scars. This wasn't just about Carl or one rogue HOA guard. It's about what happens when power goes unchecked, turning neighbors into adversaries and homes into battlegrounds. Sarah's story is a wake-up call, a glaring red flag that HOAs meant to foster community can become breeding grounds for petty tyrants like Carl. His actions weren't just a mistake. They were a symptom of a deeper issue. Authority without accountability. How many other neighborhoods are dealing with their own? Carl's, people wielding power they're not qualified to hold, endangering lives over misplaced pride or outdated rules. This incident could have ended in tragedy, and that thought still chills me to the bone. Sarah, with her years of training and nerves of steel, walked away unharmed. But what about someone else? What about a kid, a delivery driver, or a visitor? Who doesn't have her skills? The fallout in our community didn't stop with Carl's firing. The petition to disband the HOA grew, sparking heated debates at every mailbox and backyard barbecue. Some neighbors wanted reform, stricter oversight, mandatory training for security, transparent budgets. Others, like Mrs. Jenkins, argued for scrapping the whole system. letting us live without the constant threat of fines or overzealous patrols. I joined the reform group, helping draft proposals for a new board election and clear rules on security. Hires. But beyond our little cul-de-sac, Sarah's story ignited a national conversation. Ex-posts and news segments dissected the role of HOAs, with experts weighing in on their legal limits and horror stories flooding comment sections. One viral post read, "HOAs are supposed to protect property values, not play vigilante. Justice for Sarah." It was humbling to see my daughter's name become a rallying cry, but it also underscored the stakes. This wasn't just our fight. For Sarah, the incident was a blip in her high-stakes world. She was back in D.C. by Monday, leading her team through another operation, her focus unshaken. But when we talked on the phone, I heard a quiet resolve in her voice. "Mom, I'm fine," she said, but added, "People need to know this can't happen again." She's right. Her job is to protect the public, but who protects her when she's off duty, trying to visit her mom? The answer shouldn't be an armed wannabe cop with a golf cart and a grudge. It's on us, communities, leaders, everyday people, to demand better. To demand systems that prioritize safety over ego, unity over control. For my YouTube family, this story is personal, but it's also universal. Think about your own neighborhood. Who's holding the reins? Are they serving you or are they serving their own agendas? Sarah's a hero, not just for how she handled Carl, but for the countless lives she protects every day. Her strength inspires me, and I hope it inspires you too. So, hit that like button if you're proud of her, because I know I am. Subscribe for more real-life stories that make you think, feel, and act. Share this video to spark a conversation. Let's get people talking about power, accountability, and what it means to feel safe at home. Drop a comment below. Have you dealt with an HOA nightmare? Let's build this community together, one story at a time. Stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next one.